Imagine you're a Spanish-speaking immigrant living in San Francisco exactly a century ago. You're far from home, navigating a new culture, a new language, and a lot of times blatant segregation. So how do you stay connected? How do you hold on to your identity? Well, for thousands of people, the answer arrived every single week in the form of a newspaper called Hispano America. In this explainer, we're going to take a close look at this publication to see how it wasn't just a news source, but a vital reflection of the society, politics, and daily life of the Hispanic diaspora during the Roaring '20s. Take a look at this front page of Hispano America from April 1919, edited by the exiled Mexican journalist Julio G. Arce. Every single inch of column space here was incredibly precious. Arce basically transformed this publication into the ultimate mirror, reflecting the everyday lives, the deep anxieties, and the high hopes of the Hispanic community in the United States. It was literally their lifeline to their homeland and their roadmap for surviving and thriving in California. Today, we'll be flipping through the pages of this historic Sunday edition, section by section. We're covering The Mirror of an Era, Front Page War and Politics, Literature and Diabolical Chronicles, Advertising and Daily Life, Society Notes, and finally, The Legacy of Hispano America. Let's start with Section 1, The Mirror of an Era, the context. To really grasp the profound impact of this paper, we've got to know the man behind the printing press. Julio G. Arce was a pharmacist, an intellectual, and a journalist in Sinaloa, Mexico. But the violent upheaval of the Mexican Revolution forced him into exile. He arrived in San Francisco in 1915 as part of a massive diaspora. By 1916, he took over a paper called La Crónica and completely revamped it, shifting its subtitle to Spanish to declare it a Hispano-American weekly. Arce evolved from a regional intellectual in Mexico to a fierce defender of the Spanish language and immigrant rights in California, leading the paper right into its golden era during the 1920s. Moving on to Section 2, Front Page, War and Politics. For immigrants back then, news from home was literally a matter of survival. On one hand, you had explosive news of the Mexican Revolution, specifically things like the overthrow of Mexican President Venustiano Carranza. On the other hand, there was intense coverage of the Jenkins case, which was a massive U.S.-Mexico diplomatic crisis. Arce had to navigate a really polarized readership, and he did it by balancing these explosive topics impartially rather than pushing one specific political faction. He just presented the facts neutrally, knowing full well that his reader spanned all sorts of different political ideologies but shared a common need for accurate info. This whole approach is perfectly summed up by a guiding principle of the era: preferably seek the improvement and progress of the Hispanic American people. Arce used this prime front-page real estate to build an information shield. The main goal wasn't just to report the news. It was to keep the diaspora informed and rigorously defend the cultural and civil rights of the Hispanic community against the growing anti-immigrant sentiment of the 1920s. All right, Section 3, Literature and Diabolical Chronicles. Turning the page from heavy politics, the paper offered a totally vibrant world of high culture, packed with poetry, essays, and cultural commentary. You'd find poetry by writers like Manuel J. Zavala from Sinaloa, alongside highly anticipated regular features like the Crónicas de lo Relay. Arce himself was a huge contributor under the pen name Jorge Ulica, writing his famous Crónica Diabólica. These were satirical, humorous chronicles that gently poked fun at the immigrant experience and the clash of cultures in the U.S. And the contrast here is just striking. Think about it. We're looking at a community that was often working grueling manual labor jobs, facing official and open segregation in their daily lives. Yet every Sunday, they were consuming high literature, poetry, and sharp satire in their native language. It perfectly illustrates how immigrants balance the really harsh realities of adapting to a new country with a deep, desperate need to preserve their intellectual and artistic heritage. Let's check out Section 4, Advertising, Daily Life. If you ever want to know how everyday people actually lived, you have to look at the ads. These pages are absolutely stuffed with promotions for Columbia Phonographs, local Spanish-speaking doctors, dentists, barbershops, and the Bank of Italy. This wasn't just commerce, guys. It was a roadmap for survival. In a society that frequently excluded them, these ads pointed readers towards safe, welcoming spaces where they could just do business in their own language. These specific consumer desires reveal a totally different narrative about the 1920s immigrant. We're seeing a community with growing purchasing power. They were investing in their health with doctors they could trust, stashing away their hard-earned cash at the Bank of Italy, and clearly yearning for the musical sounds of their native countries with those imported records. It shows a community actively building a life, not just surviving one. Flipping further back, we hit Section 5, Society Notes. Right at the heart of the community were the society pages. Sections like Notas de Sociedad painstakingly documented the social fabric of the diaspora. They listed local banquets, patriotic celebrations like the Fiestas Patrias in September, Red Cross charity events, and everyday milestones like baptisms, weddings, and travels. It proves without a doubt that this wasn't some fractured group of isolated immigrants. It was a highly organized, deeply connected, and vibrant social network. These pages tell the micro-narrative of the reader. They show us that despite the segregation, the political anxieties, and the economic hurdles of the 1920s, this community found profound joy, dignity, and unity in each other. They crowned queens at festivals, they danced, they fundraised for those in need, and they did it all together. Which brings us to our final section, the legacy of Hispanoamerica. Historical records show that Julio G. Arce penned his fiery editorials and humorous chronicles right up until the day he died in 1926. But the foundation he built was so deeply rooted in the lives of his readers that the newspaper actually continued to serve as the voice of the community for another 8 years, finally closing its doors in 1934. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. We've just seen a newspaper that delivered impartial political analysis, high poetry, community support, and fierce cultural pride all in one package. If our modern society were judged by the media we consume today, would it reflect a community as rich, resilient, and cultured as the 1920s readers of Hispanoamerica? It's a pretty fascinating standard they set a century ago. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this look into the past gave you a fresh perspective on the real power of the printed word.